Nobody sent out a press release. Nobody updated an official depth chart. Todd Monken didn't walk to a podium and make a formal declaration. But something happened at Brown's minicamp that every coach, coordinator, and evaluator in that building understood the moment it unfolded in front of them. The practice field has its own language, and the people fluent in it don't need an announcement. Dillon Gabriel showed up to that practice, took his reps, and handed Shedeur Sanders the starting job, not because the system was rigged against him, not because the rep distribution was unfair. He handed it over because when Cleveland needed him to show what he actually is, he showed them. And what he showed them was not a starting quarterback in the National Football League. Let me walk through this carefully, because the details aren't just interesting, they're decisive. When Shedeur Sanders arrived at minicamp, there was no manufactured moment, no social media performance, no speech. He walked directly to where the first-team offense was assembling and got to work. Because that is where Todd Monken's staff directed the first-team reps. Let me be exact about what that means before anything else. Organizations do not accidentally assign first-team reps to a quarterback they are genuinely uncertain about. Rep distribution in NFL practices is one of the most brutally honest signals a coaching staff ever sends, completely independent of whatever language they choose in press conferences. The public statement says, "Competition is open." The practice field tells you where the evaluation actually lives. Shedeur got the ones. Before a single throw was made, before a single coverage was read, the story was already being written. Gabriel worked with the second unit. And in the culture of NFL evaluation, that placement carries its own quiet but unmistakable weight. Working with the second team group is the organization communicating a specific message. We have a working theory about you, but we will give you the field to challenge it. That is the moment. That is the only opportunity that matters. What Gabriel needed to do was perform so convincingly, so undeniably, so clearly above the level of his current positioning that the coaching staff had no rational alternative but to reconsider the arrangement. That is the only path. You do not climb a depth chart by pointing at where you started. You climb it by performing at a level the people watching cannot honestly ignore. Gabriel did not do that. In 7-on-7, he went 3 for 6 with 2 interceptions. I need you to actually sit with those numbers. 3 completions out of 6 attempts, 2 turnovers. In 7-on-7, a session specifically constructed to evaluate decision-making, rhythm, and ball placement inside the most controlled possible environment. There is no pass rush in 7-on-7. Nobody is collapsing the pocket. Nobody is forcing decisions faster than a quarterback wants to make them. The only obstacles between Gabriel and a clean throw are his own preparation, his own mechanics, and his own ability to read a coverage and deliver the ball with real conviction. In those conditions, 3 for 6 with 2 interceptions is not a rough start. It is not adjusting to a new system on day 1. It is a quarterback completing exactly half his throws and giving the defense 2 free possessions in the most favorable evaluation window available to him all camp. That is not a bad day. That is an indictment. But the statistic that will live longest in this story is not the 7-on-7 line. It is one specific throw in 11-on-11 because that throw communicates something the numbers alone cannot fully capture. Gabriel put a man in motion. He went through his pre-snap read correctly. He scanned the field, processed the coverage, arrived at his decision, and then threw a ball with nothing behind it. No authority, no velocity, no conviction. The ball didn't travel so much as drift. It floated toward the receiver like something that had already given up on itself before it got there. Defenders have a very specific name for throws like that. They call them gifts. And the player who reached up and took that gift out of the air was not a seasoned NFL corner with a mental catalog of quarterback tendencies built over years of professional film study. He was a tryout player, a man who drove to that facility on nothing but hope and the belief that somewhere in that building, someone would give him his chance. He got his chance right there, and he converted it cleanly. Here is why that specific interception carries more weight than any turnover in that 7-on-7 session. Context is everything when coaches evaluate what they're seeing. A quarterback getting picked off by a Pro Bowl cornerback on a perfectly disguised coverage scheme. That's football. It happens to the best of them, and nobody in a film room treats it as evidence about whether you belong in the building. But a quarterback getting picked off by a tryout player on a routine completion attempt, that gets replayed in slow motion. That gets referenced when the staff is determining which quarterbacks earn first-team reps in the next session and which ones need to demonstrate command of the fundamentals before they get back on the field with live personnel. Gabriel handed them that reference point on day 1 of Minicamp. That is the kind of moment that follows you through an entire training camp. And then came the press conference. This is honestly where my frustration stopped being analytical and became something more personal, because a rough practice is correctable. A bad rep is something you address through film work and honest self-assessment and the mechanical adjustments that every quarterback makes after difficult sessions. A press conference answer, once it leaves your mouth, is permanent. A reporter gave Gabriel one of the simplest, most open questions available in any media session. Where did you spend your offseason? An open door. A direct invitation to demonstrate that you treated the months between last season and this minicamp with the urgency this competition actually demands. Talk about preparation. Talk about film study. Talk about conversations with the new coaching staff about what their system requires. Say anything that signals you understood what this moment called for and you answered it with everything you had. His answer was 3 words. I was places. I want you to really hear what those 3 words tell a coaching staff that is evaluating not just arm talent, but mindset, not just mechanics, but understanding. I was places is not professionalism. It is not quiet confidence. It is either the answer of a player who genuinely does not grasp the weight of his situation, or someone who has decided that the weight of his situation is not something he needs to address honestly in a public setting. Both interpretations are deeply concerning for a quarterback trying to earn the most important job on an NFL roster. When he was pushed further on his playbook progress, the answer got worse. He talked about conceptual similarities between systems. He talked about how everyone processes progressions differently. He talked about how learning continues as the days keep coming. That is a full minute of words that communicate absolutely nothing. I know what genuine playbook immersion sounds like when it comes out of a quarterback's mouth. I know what it sounds like when a player has spent 3 months genuinely living inside a system and developed real opinions about what it demands. Gabriel had no opinions. He had verbal filler, the press conference equivalent of that floated interception, technically structured, completely empty, and gone from memory the moment it ended. Now contrast that with Shedeur Sanders, not because the comparison is convenient, but because it is real, and it represents the clearest window available into what actually separates these 2 players at this moment. When Shedeur talks about his offseason, he does not wave it away with vague geography. He gets specific. He talks about the mechanical work he focused on. He references actual conversations with coaches about how the new system creates specific advantages for a quarterback who processes coverage quickly before the snap. He talks about looking at his own development from a different angle, identifying the specific areas where improvement was required, and building a plan around addressing them. He talks about all of it with the energy of a man who genuinely obsessed over this period because he understood what was waiting at the end of it. That specificity is not a stylistic preference. It is not personality. It is evidence. It is the direct, unavoidable product of someone who actually did the work and can describe it in precise detail because he lived inside it every single day for months. Let me go one layer deeper, because this story carries a dimension that is not receiving the honest attention it deserves. Last season in Cleveland was not just difficult for Shedeur in terms of production numbers. It was difficult in a specific directional way that mattered. His development was being managed down rather than elevated from inside the building. He walked into a franchise structurally unprepared to support him and spent months watching his opportunities get quietly constrained by an arrangement that had nothing to do with football performance and everything to do with organizational politics and financial commitments. Dillon Gabriel was in that building the entire time. He watched all of it unfold. He benefited, quietly and consistently, from a rep structure and an organizational atmosphere that was not built on genuine evaluation. He was a quiet beneficiary of something fundamentally unfair for an extended stretch, and he never stood in front of a camera and said a word about it. He chose silence. And silence in that context is not neutral ground. Silence is consent. Silence is choosing your own positioning over someone else's right to a real shot. I am not arguing that Gabriel engineered that situation or worked to make it worse than it already was. But he moved through an entire season, collecting the advantages of a compromised environment, and then arrived at this minicamp talking about familiar faces and new routines as if none of the history exists. That posture does not hold. And the accountability he has avoided in press conference rooms is finding him on the practice field one floated interception at a time, because the field does not negotiate with narratives, and it does not reward carefully managed public images. The field simply tells the truth. Todd Monken is a fundamentally different evaluator than the coach who ran that building 12 months ago. The previous regime had room for loyalty arrangements and predetermined outcomes, dressed up as open competition. Monken operates on one organizing principle, and it does not bend for any other consideration. Who gives this team the best chance to win? That question does not have a political answer. It does not reward prior positioning on a previous staff's depth chart. It has a film answer, and it has a practice field answer, and the practice field on day one of minicamp delivered that answer in terms that left nothing open to interpretation. One quarterback ran the first-team offense with the command and composure of a player who has already internalized the hardest demands of this system. He moved the offense with clean authority. He arrived at his decisions before pressure could force the wrong ones. He delivered the ball with the kind of decisive velocity that makes defensive backs think twice before committing to a jump route, because they know if they guess wrong, the throw is already gone and the damage is already done. The other quarterback completed half his throws, gave the defense 2 free possessions, and let a tryout player make the most memorable play of his entire scouting weekend. The contrast was not subtle. It did not require analytical interpretation. It was immediate. One quarterback looked like a franchise starter. The other looked like someone who spent his offseason somewhere that was not a film room. What makes this moment matter beyond the immediate competition is what it means inside the larger arc of what Shedeur Sanders has been through in Cleveland. He was drafted into a compromised situation. He walked into a building that was not built around him and spent a year watching opportunities get managed away from him by forces that had nothing to do with his performance. He survived all of it. He processed it, worked through it, absorbed a complete coaching transition and a full system reset, and showed up to the very first evaluation moment of this new era completely prepared. Not adequately prepared. Not acceptably prepared. Prepared in the specific, almost obsessive way that the best quarterbacks approach every opportunity they are given, because they understand at a cellular level that opportunities do not always return. That kind of resilience does not receive enough attention in conversations about what separates quarterbacks who become genuine cornerstones from the ones who have the tools, but never quite find their footing because the first real difficulty proved to be one too many. Shedeur found his footing in the worst possible circumstances and came out the other side sharper and more prepared than he would have been if everything had gone smoothly from the start. Cleveland has been waiting a long time for something real at quarterback. The fan base's relationship with genuine optimism has been reshaped by years of specific disappointment into something closer to a protective instinct. They have learned to hold back because hope in Cleveland has historically been the setup for a very particular kind of pain. But what is standing in front of that city right now is not a project. It is not a calculated bet on potential that might materialize in 2 or 3 years under ideal conditions. It is a quarterback who has already demonstrated under real evaluation conditions that he belongs running that first-team offense, making those real decisions, delivering the ball with the authority that experienced coaches recognize immediately because they have been waiting to see it appear in that building for a long time. The official announcement has not happened. The formal depth chart update has not been published. The press conference where Monken says the words in front of cameras has not taken place. but the practice field already made the announcement. The rep distribution already confirmed it. The way coaches' attention tracks a quarterback in real time, which decisions generate the quiet nods that experienced evaluators give when they see something they were genuinely hoping to see. All of it already delivered the verdict on day one, and somewhere in the honest part of his mind, in the corner that press conference language and vague off-season geography cannot reach, I believe Gabriel already knows what the film knows. He felt it when the first-team reps went the other direction. He felt it when the ball left his hand without conviction on that final throw. He knew before the defender reached up that it was wrong and that the moment was already gone. Athletes register these things in real time, even when they cannot say them publicly. Shedeur Sanders is the starting quarterback of the Cleveland Browns. The film says so. The rep structure says so. Every set of experienced eyes on that practice field says so. What comes next is just the formality of making it official.